So today we're taking a look at the Advent of Tess 2025 ebook and looking through, okay, what's special about the patterns in this book? How do they relate to the 25 days of Advent of Tess? And what are the kind of key things you need to know to get the most out of this ebook? So starting off, Advent of Tess is a series of tutorials that I release every December. It has 25 daily tutorials released from the 1st through 25th, starting with easier patterns and working up to harder ones, building skills as you go, introducing new techniques slowly, and building up to some pretty crazy patterns that would be a challenge for anybody to fold, including me, frankly, with some of these. And it ends up with some pretty fabulous patterns with flagstone motifs, or I should say six-fold flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists. And the crazy thing about all of these patterns is these are not what you think of with standard origami models. These are not the models. The standard for a tessellation is an infinitely repeating pattern. And so with those patterns, there's some hints in those patterns and in the daily PDFs that you get when you sign up at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent. But it's not a unique way of repeating the pattern. So for example, the pattern that introduces rhombus twists named citrus slices, this guy, can repeat in many different ways, and I have 3 of them in the ebook. One of them treats this rhombus as a position of twofold rotational symmetry, which is the hints given in that smaller PDF that's released with each tutorial. But also there's a way to put more triangles in between, where you can see there are 2 rhombus twists between repeats of the hexagon and triangles. And there's another way also in the ebook. And by the way, like, these other ways of repeating the pattern were designed specifically for this ebook, and they haven't been released anywhere else. They're going to be in Tessellation Garden soon, but they haven't quite made it in there yet because I've been busy promoting Advent of Tess. But the names are themed, so it's citrus slices and fruitcake and jello salad. And so these patterns have more twists on the front than just the closed hexagon. This one actually has the open triangle and rhombus twists that you also see on the back showing up then on the front, which is pretty wild. And there's multiple ways to continue even the more complicated patterns. So this one is Maelstrom, and I believe this one's Hurricane, and then there's another one named Blast Furnaces that's in the same series. And there's all of these. It's really stunning in backlighting. Let me get the light out. So you see these circles with the rhombus twists around the open hexagons. And here there's basically just a triangle in between. There's more going on the back. But with the next one, there's many more triangles between the repeats of those next circles. And with Blast Furnaces, there's a whole bunch of rhombus twists in between, bunch of flagstone spacing. It's quite wild, actually. And so there's so many different ways to repeat the same kind of pattern that I'm not claiming any kind of exclusivity with how many ways are in the ebook. There's 64 patterns in the ebook. Excuse me. But those are not the only ways to continue these central patterns. There's so many more different options when it comes to getting these things to repeat, and even things that are as complicated as these trapezoid twists around a closed hexagon. Let's actually take a look over at the PDF itself, and we can see, okay, we've got Advent of Tess 2025, some of the patterns that are in the core tutorials, and then for each of these days we see multiple patterns, and sometimes many multiple patterns. So for example, the one I was just looking at, which is an alternate ending of encrusted, the one I showed is collision zones. Then there's also barnacles and projection. For days 24 and 25, there's 4 different patterns for each of those days, which is just wild. It's amazing how many different ways these complicated patterns can be repeated. And there's even more than is in this ebook, because I couldn't complete them all because there are infinitely many, and as a finite being with only a year to produce this, I was only able to put 64 patterns in the ebook. And so when you're looking at this ebook, the predominant thing in the ebook is the crease patterns, and crease patterns on 64 grid divisions. So it's important to be able to read the crease patterns. And one key thing that I put in this year that was not in previous years is not only labeling what the key features are. So for this particular example, for roundabout, we have our hexagon twist in the middle, the triangle twist connected to them 2 spaces away, and the other hexagon twist, it's a closed hexagon on the back, connected to the triangles. Not only did I put all of those pieces of information, but also I have tiling diagrams where the colors of the different positions match the key features. And we'll see an example of that matching a little bit later on. So in that tiling also, I have an annotated form of the tiling that shows the rings around the center and the positions of symmetry points, because these are tiling features, not necessarily crease pattern features. And there's so much to see when it comes to all of these different twists, and are they on the front? Are they on the back? Is it a open? Is it a closed? Is it a this, that, and the other? The crease pattern can be overwhelming. So it's important to be able to simplify and see, okay, and this is the tiling for the pattern that's maybe the hardest to fold, syzygy this year. But we can break it down and say, okay, we're going to do the center, and that's going to have 6 rhombus twists, and it's going to have places where pleats overlap that we're going to set up as 2 triangles but not squash them into anything. Then in the next layer around, we're going to turn those places that wanted to be triangles into trapezoids and have triangles in between the 2 trapezoids on the same side, and work all our way around like that. And then our next layer, we're going to add more trapezoid and rhombus twists. So this is really breaking it down in a way that you can see clearly what is and is not included in a ring around the center. That's very confusing when you try to figure it out from a crease pattern. And then continuing on down, I have a whole page on how to choose your grid. The bottom line there is, if you're not sure that you can finish the pattern, if you're doing this as a practice piece, use a standard grid. Use whatever grid size you're comfortable with, whether that's 24, 32, 40, 48, 64. And then for a display piece, you'll want to use the rotated grid fraction that you can find on the cover page of the bigger pattern. And likewise, you can use those bigger crease patterns to see, okay, well, how much will fit on a certain number of grid divisions. So this is a pattern named circle packing that has closed hexagon twists and closed and open triangle twists on the opposite side. And it takes this idea of, oh, I put in a closed hexagon and then I put in open triangles and then I put in more closed hexagons. Well, I guess I've got an alternating pattern, right? Wrong. There's all kinds of different options when it comes to these patterns. So then we can continue down. So this is the portion that's one of the Advent of Tess PDFs when you're signed up at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent to get those email reminders. You also get these PDFs on the hub page. It has photos of the front and back with and without backlighting. It has information about who figured out this pattern, who diagrammed it, what twists are used, what's the difficulty rating. And it comes with the crease pattern for the 24 division grid for the tutorial, and that same crease pattern with the key features marked. This one, even though it uses only closed triangle twists, I think of it as 4 distinct positions because there's different handedness for the corner and center twist of the group of 4 twists. So even though it's laid out as 6 and 1, it's mathematically speaking still groups of 4. There's just less space between the corners than there is from the corners to the center. And these colors, the darkest and lightest, and then light middle, dark middle, gold colors, match exactly on the tiling diagram. Now they might not match, well, it might be a slightly different orientation than how they're laid out on the crease pattern, but the colors all match. So here you can see the groups of 4 pretty clearly, where in the crease pattern it looked like groups of 6 and solo triangles. And you can continue and say, okay, well, how is this going to be folded? It's going to be folded with the 6 around the middle and then 3 per side, working your way around. How is it going to repeat? Well, there's a position of symmetry in the middle, position of symmetry in the middle of each group of 4, and then that middle symmetry position is the same as what you find at all the corners of the tiling. So that is what's included with each day's pattern just for free outside of the ebook. Then what the ebook gets you is more information about the rotation of your grid to get a nice finished pattern. It tells you more information about the tiling. It shows pictures with more repeats. And it has the crease pattern drawn out on 64 grid divisions. So like I said earlier, these patterns are infinite. So there's no particular recommendation by drawing it on 64 grid divisions. It just lets you see lots of the pattern instead of just a little bit. And it lets you see better how it's going to repeat. And then the other feature of these crease patterns is the skeleton. So the second page where a network of dots and lines has been overlaid on top of the crease pattern, with dots in the middle of each twist and lines connecting twists that share a pleat. So there's all kinds of great information, and this kind of crease pattern with the 64 divisions and with the skeleton is what's added in the crease pattern, along with all of those intro pages, and one intro page that wasn't in this overview that has a coupon code for $35 off of Tessellation Garden. So these crease patterns are what you get for all 64 of the full patterns in this ebook. And what I was just saying is that the coupon code gets you $35 off of Tessellation Garden, which has all of my crease patterns in there. And there's over 600 in there right now, and that number is just going to keep going up. Like I said, a bunch of this stack hasn't made it in there yet, just because I've been doing Advent of Tess promo instead of updating that, but that'll be coming in the next month or so. And there are so many patterns. There's also a bunch of patterns in Tessellation Garden that are alternate endings for previous years of Advent of Tess that weren't folded in time to make it into the ebook. Like, for example, the ones that I designed and just folded in the last week or two in last year's video about Advent of Tess alternate endings. So these are alternate endings of Clematis, which was, I want to say, day 24 last year. And this one I haven't even finished folding yet. But I want to take a few minutes now to go ahead and design some more alternate endings for these patterns. And I'd love for y'all to write in the chat, like, what day of pattern would you like me to design a new alternate ending for? So we've got kind of this menu of these different days, and they get pretty complicated, but I'm confident that I can find a new alternate ending for any of these patterns. Just pick a day from 1 to 25, write it in the chat, and I'll design a new alternate ending. And who knows, maybe there will be some choices where y'all can get some input too. So I haven't seen anything in the chat yet, but we can go ahead and start figuring out a new design. And I'm going to switch us over to here and make sure that I can still see the chat. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to semi-arbitrarily pick day 14. So this is a pattern with trapezoid twists, and they're arrayed in a really nice way around the center. It's pretty floral. I have one of the alternate endings of that pattern in my stack that was in front of me. And let's see if we can figure out another one. Yeah, Chris, we can definitely come back to day 1. Let's take a look at this day 14 real quick. And I'm going to start by going to my I have a master document of a whole bunch of different tilings. And this particular pattern uses, not that one, but the skinny version. There. Uses this tiling. So it has those positions of twofold rotational symmetry inside of a twofold skinny mixed depth hexagon twist. So one of the things I can do is switch to a different tiling that has that same start. Let me see if I can find it in here. This guy. So that would be another option with this pattern, to have those same rhombus twists, and even you could even have the same triangle twist out here, but then have the position of symmetry in the next triangle twist out. So if I go here and I'm going to open up a crease pattern file. These are in the crease pattern drawing template files available for free on my website, training.gatheringfolds.com. And going to say, okay, we start this pattern with a closed hexagon, and then we have closed triangles on the back, and then there are open trapezoids on the front and mixed depth skinny hexagons on the back. So I'm going to guess and say that our double depth triangle will be on the front, and I can paste all of that in and start assembling the pattern from there. And yeah, I'm gonna need to shorten all of these pleats to get that triangle close enough in. And let's see. So I'm looking at the folded piece and seeing, okay, before I copy this, is there anything else that I want to shorten? That one's going to also need to be short. And then I can rotate 60 degrees and make a copy. Probably that other pleat is going to need to be shorter too. So I'll go ahead and do that too. And then my trapezoid twist, conveniently I picked the right orientations. It's going to snap in here, and I need to make some adjustments on those pleats. And that's actually going to need to be one further, and I think that should snap good. Okay. And then I can duplicate and rotate and see how my mixed depth hexagon is going to be fitting in. And one thing I'm noticing is that my mixed depth hexagon is the mirror image of what it should be. So I can mirror that. It's going to fit right there. And I can shorten the appropriate pleats. Let's see, how did that one want to be shortened? Okay, just like that. And get that snapped in. I'm going to make sure to also shorten on the other side, although I don't know yet precisely how much I need to shorten there. Ooh, and we did forget our other triangle twist. So I'll rotate here and let's see. Oh yeah. And we actually have a choice here that we didn't have before, whether we want the next triangle twist that resolves these two pleats to be closed, open, some other size. I will say open is rather nice for this situation because it leaves tube pleat spacing everywhere. Actually, no, it leaves 3 spaces. So we should still have a tube pleat if we use a closed triangle twist. Let me bring over the options and look at them. So these are going to be right-handed triangles. And up in there. Okay, so if we use a closed triangle twist here, we would still have tube pleat spacing. That would be perfectly reasonable. The reason why the original pattern used the open triangle is because that position had to be a location of symmetry. So we had to see the same thing. So these 2 spaces between valley folds, 3 spaces between mountains. We had to see those 2 spaces between valleys and 3 spaces between mountains everywhere else too. But here we have a choice. So does anyone have a preference of keeping it as an open triangle or switching to the closed? And there might be a bit much of a delay to be asking for this live. And if I have to make the decision, I'm going to go for the closed triangle. Switch to closed. Nice. Glad we agree, Chris. And I'm going to adjust the pleats of this new triangle to fit into that space. There we go. Okay, so with all of that, then I can start putting together these chunks and seeing where the double depth twist fits in. And specifically, I'm going to make this 6-fold rotationally symmetric. So I'm choosing some of these to keep and then duplicating around the center. And rotating those copies. So now we can treat that whole thing as a group and duplicate and say, well, let's stick my next one, say here, or let's do it not exactly on top of the other twist we had there. And let's see, if we have this guy, it's going to need to fit in. And it's going to, oh, okay, there we go. I was going to say, I thought I got the right-handedness. And nice, that is, in fact, the spacing, or could it always, there, my brain always goes to, did it have to be this way, or are we lucky that we picked this way? And I think maybe a bit of both with this particular one, because we could do different spacings, but the spacing is going to determine what size of triangle is needed. So this closed double depth triangle fits in. I just need to trim some of those pleats to get it to fit in nicely. And I'll do that on all 3 sides. And then I'm just going to double check that, oh, okay. Yeah, my pleats for everything else are a little long too. And specifically, the pleats from these triangles are really long. And if I adjust it like that, then there won't be overlaps. So I can go in here and ungroup and take all of the triangles with the pleats that are too long out and copy the one that's just right. And rotate that around. That's often faster than adjusting the pleats on all 6 of them. Nice. Yeah, Carla, I'm glad you're on the day 14 train. So with this, and we'll do another copy of the double depth triangle twist. That is what's needed to copy this pattern everywhere. And from here, it just needs a name, it needs to be folded, it needs photos. But that's how I make these alternate endings for Advent of Tess. And yes, this is the fun part for me. This is something where if I could just sit around and make these patterns and have people pay me for it, I would be very happy to do that. But that's not quite the world we live in. And so I do have to fold the patterns and teach the tutorials. I mean, I love teaching the tutorials too. I'm going to get it to not snap to page borders or other points. How do I determine what to trim at the edge of the paper? See, this is why I'm using a template for the 64 grid divisions. Anything that's sitting outside of those 64 divisions gets trimmed off. And so, so there's another potential question that you might be asking of, how do I know what pleats to shorten. And that is a matter of matching up the twists and seeing what's overlapping. But in terms of trimming off the crease pattern at the edge, I select everything, group it, and then come in and use my mask layer and trim everything with that. So all of the patterns are drawn on the same 64 division grid, and that 64 divisions is not necessarily a folding recommendation. Okay, can I visualize how the end looks like on the actual paper? So yeah, a lot of my finished pieces do have pleated borders, and we can actually come back to the stack of patterns and look through and see, like, was I able to get a pleated border on this one or on that one, and look at what conditions have to be true in order to get that. So with these patterns, all of the patterns that are just rhombus and triangles have these parallel pleats at the edges. So this one, this one, this one. And then we get into things that have rhombus twists connected to hexagons, and that has much less of that effect. We see it sometimes, but not completely. It's often a much shorter border. And one of the things going on is that all of the triangle twists in this pattern are open triangles, but you can see here I have a closed triangle at the edge, and it's connected to a hexagon. Well, the hexagon is only supposed to connect to rhombus twists. So this is a rhombus twist that I changed into a triangle twist to make the border nicer. And you can see another one right there. So there's 2 per edge on this one. There's some patterns where I just fold all the way to the edge without a pleated border at all. And then other patterns where the pleated border is very large. This one has a pleated border, but it's very overlapping. It's not going out far away from the twists. This one looks like it has a pleated border, more or less, but there's a pleat overlap right here, the pleat coming from over here, and these twists are right at the edge. So it's kind of a mixed bag of whether I'm folding with a pleated border or not. And this one, if I had any more grid, would be a pleated border. It just so happens that it needed those trapezoid twists right at the edge. And then these have great big pleated borders. So what kind of border you can get on your pattern is actually a question for the tiling. So if we look at our tiling document, what we're looking for in order to have a nice pleated border is lines that go straight through the tiling. And this is easiest to see in, for example, patterns with hexagon and triangle twists. There are lines that go straight through. You can connect those lines into hexagons around the center. You can keep adding rings of hexagons around the center, or you can keep adding layers of twists that have a smooth hexagonal border around the center. You can see this very outermost edge is a true hexagon. But there's other patterns, other tilings, where this one, for example, you start out being able to get a nice hexagon border to your set of twists, but then later on you can't. And this is a tiling property. And actually with this particular one, if you add in the triangles and trapezoids right in these gaps, you would get another perfect hexagonal border, but you won't get another one after that. Yes, having the smooth outer border in the tiling results in there not being any pleat overlaps, because the way that I'm using these tilings is as an abstraction of the tessellation, where each tile stands in for a twist, and the pleats of these twists leave the tile edges perpendicularly. So if we have this one that I was showing earlier, all of these tile edges that are parallel to each other, then the pleats that leave them will also be parallel to each other. And having that smooth outer boundary is the condition to get a perfect pleated border. And while we're here in the tilings, there are, and this is something that I talk about a lot inside of Tessellation Academy. For example, the tiling for this pattern that has a very large pleated border. You can see in this tiling, all of the lines continue straight through forever. And so I can draw boundaries. I'll get rid of those colors so the boundaries show up better. I can draw boundaries that are perfectly smooth as endpoints of my layers. And so I can have all of this complexity, and yet all of my layers have smooth endpoints. I'm not struggling to see where to stop my ring around the center. In contrast, there's other tilings, and this one's a particularly good example, also used a couple times in Advent of Tess this year, where there's a nice boundary around the first repeat, and that's the extent that we're folding in Advent of Tess. Then there's a nice boundary just after the next hexagons that are the same as what was in the center, but not including the full repeat. And then there's a not so nice boundary where you're cutting through some twists. And that's where, for example, the one that I showed earlier had the pleat overlap here at the edge, and it needed some twists to be close to the edge while the repeats are aligned, because those repeats are not stacking up in the same column in the tiling. So you're not going to have a tiling break where the repeats are aligned with the edge. So it's all of these pieces working together okay, we construct the tessellation from the tiling, and then we come back to the tiling to see, okay, how much fits together nicely and has a smooth outline that will have pleats coming out from it. And then we go over to the crease pattern and we say, okay, given that I'm folding that much, how many grid divisions do I need? So there are a lot of little pieces that work together to get these patterns working nicely. And then in terms of the tiling of the pattern that we just designed together, which by the way still needs a name, for this one, let's take a look at those boundaries. We do get nice boundaries out here, and I haven't drawn it far enough to really say, I am very confident that this next line, so the line on top of that triangle pointing to the left, the same as this line here, that line's going to cut into a trapezoid twist. And that is going to be very unpleasant to fold, because coming out the other side on top of this triangle, we would be coming up in here, and that's the corner cutting down through. Geez, that's going to be a bit of a pain once you get out past these next repeats in terms of the ring around the center and trying to get all of those twists squashed in the first place, and then trying to get a nice border outside of that. So that's what's going on with that particular pattern. And it's, I mean, like I said, it's all about how the shapes line up together. One of the amazing, incredible things about the last 3 days of Advent of Tess is that the way the shapes line up has exactly the same edge conditions as if we had a small hexagon and triangles, and then hexagons in the corners and triangles instead of these trapezoids. So you can put it into the same different arrangements that you would use in the hexagons and triangles 6-fold tiling. And you can come up with these really wild options for how to continue folding these patterns. It's just kind of nuts what's possible with these designs. And that was one set of things. I have some others that are variations on the same idea. So like these guys, I think it's these two, yeah. It's got the same orientation, same alignment. Actually, all 3 of these have those really, really nice properties of the repeats of the center stack up in the same column, and you get smooth outlines. All 3 of these do that. And all 3 would use about the same amount of grid. And then you have varying degrees of, is it triangles, is it rhombi, is it hexagons, in between the great big hexagon and trapezoid twists. So this is the kind of thing where you can bring it all together and say, hey, I'm going to make alternate endings that use these tilings instead of these tilings that are on screen right now, because of those properties, because I'm going to be able to fold in rings around the center that have smooth boundaries and definite endpoints. This particular one, I forget exactly which of the patterns in the ebook uses that tiling, but we can check real quick. Oh, there's 2 of them. Crocuses for day 24, and has that nice pleated border, and Swirling Dancers for day 25. So it has these like really nice properties of you can get the repeats aligned with the edge of the paper and a pleated border because the tiling has those rings around the center that make perfect smooth hexagons. And yeah, these are some of my favorite patterns that I've folded this year. It's amazing just seeing what looks like chaos working out and being nice on the edge. And in the case of swirling dancers, like that is an aligned grid. I didn't even have to rotate it. With crocuses, I did have to rotate the grid. But yeah, there's just so many great patterns that can be folded with the same starting points. So, Chris, you had said that you want to see another alternate ending to day one. We can come back to that now. One of the things I did with day one this year is instead of continuing the pattern with equilateral triangles, I chose an alternate ending for that day. And this is the one that's in the ebook. I just have to find it. There it is. I chose an alternate ending that keeps those groups of triangles and then moves and puts some rhombus twists in there. And in particular, it has these stars of rhombus twists in the tiling. The core of the tiling is actually this great big triangle that has the group of 4 equilateral triangles and then extends to include 2 rhombuses and another triangle. So, Chris, would you prefer to come up with a new tiling and try and find an alternate ending for day one, or work in the same tiling and figure out something else that we can do with it? One of the great things about the equilateral triangles tiling is you can always create new variations just by changing the spacing. Because in the baseline tiling, all the lines go straight through. And so you can just add extra space, no problem. Same tiling, okay. So working in the equilateral triangles tiling, and I am going to close some of these open files because Inkscape does have a tendency to use a lot of memory. Oh yeah, we never named this one. And yeah, fun fact, this is going to be very similar to Coven around here. And I'm very certain it's not the same in the middle as Coven, but it's going to have those clusters where the corners of these stretched out hexagon twists are going to land in the center of the triangle. All 3 of those corners are going to land in the center of the triangle. So some parts of the edges of these twists are going to be touching. So that's cool. If anyone has name suggestions, definitely drop that in the chat. But we can continue with a new equilateral triangles tiling pattern. And I'm going to go looking in another template that I have, which is my cluster 4 triangles template. And see if I can find a matching cluster of 4 to go with our triangles that are spaced out. So first I'll build my cluster with the closed triangles. And I'm gonna shorten these pleats. Good morning, Zach. Glad to see you here. And that'll make this cluster. And here I have 2, 4, 6 spaces. Yeah, finding the variations is the fun part. And actually, I'm going to paste again and make this one do that. So what I'm gonna do is see if I can pop in a different cluster outside of these groups. So that matches up, and I can take that into, okay, I'm right near the center there, and I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate that there. So this is the day 1 crease pattern. And I'm looking at my my groups of 4 triangles. I'm seeing I have one other entry with 6 spaces between the pleats. And I'm going to copy both the version on the front and the version on the back and put them in here. So I can take this and connect these twists. I can connect at a variety of different spacings. That's getting kind of dense, so I'll go 1 space further out. The problem with this, if we want to have that as a position of 3-fold rotational symmetry, and actually that's not a bad way to think about it. Instead of trying to put both of them on there at the same time, I can group everything in here and duplicate and stick it out here. That was tube pleat spacing. And then we can solve for what has to go further in. Ooh, we have trouble. We have big trouble. The problem here is that this valley fold, when it's extended out, is going to hit before the pleat of the next twist. It's going to run into that twist over there. That is a problem that I can't solve with putting another twist in. But let's see what happens if I move everything 1 space further out. Is that 3? Yes. Okay. Now that valley fold is hitting right at the corner, and we're going to be okay. The question is, though, how okay are we really going to be? So let me make a copy of this and stick it down here, and I'll move this one down as well. I can also stick one there. So we're trying to resolve this. Okay, I see. We're gonna find out if this works, because I need to use this mountain and that mountain and the mountain down below. Ooh, it's going to be an open triangle twist on this side of the paper. Nice. Okay, and it's going to be right-handed. Awesome. If this turns out, but wait, let me try something. If it turns out to be that guy, I'm going to be shocked. I don't think it will, because, okay, yeah, it's not going to be that grouping, but it is going to be an open right triangle twist. Wait, why is that going to 3? Oh, I need something else. I didn't need it to be on that pleat. And, okay. But that might not be a bad thing. If I do this one and that one. Ooh, double open on the back. I like it. And I bet if we did all of these guys as double open, no, we would get a cursed on the back. So that's going to be left-handed double open on the back. And that's going to slot in right there. Boom. We have our new design. I just need to tidy it up a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna need this guy to be shortened like that, and this guy like this. And I'm just gonna double check that that is indeed what I want. Bingo. And these guys are gonna extend, and this needs to shorten. So you can see when I'm less certain about how the pattern will turn out, I won't bother to clean up the pleats until later. Because if I had cleaned up the pleats with our original spacing for the cluster of open triangles on the back, I would have had to redo it then for the next spacing. But as it is, those are slotting in exactly at the right spacing. And so I can group that and get rid of the extras. And that is the core of our new pattern, which I can duplicate out. And there would be some other options of how to get this to repeat too. Like I said, with Inkscape getting a little overloaded, it does not want to snap right now. I'll just stick it somewhere else, I guess. And yeah, that goes there. Not sure why it's snapping sometimes, but not others. But you'll be fine. And there. This is actually the first time that I've done a pattern quite like this, where there's 4 different clusters of 4. So that's cool. To be honest, I wasn't entirely certain that it would work out. But I knew how to search for it. And that's half the battle. It just does not want to snap on this side of the page. I wonder if I ungroup, get rid of that one, if I can snap these individual clusters. Okay. Okay, Inkscape, very weird. So yeah, it looks like I have some homework to fold. But fun homework. I've also got some patterns to name. All right, so that was an exploration of these patterns that are alternate endings of the Advent of Tess patterns, and some tactics and ideas around how to keep finding new patterns, even beyond what's in the ebook. I always start with the tiling and then fill in the twists and then see how it needs to repeat. So that's going to be actually a pretty cool pattern. It's going to need like 80 divisions or something to fold nicely. Conveniently, the tiling breaks are aligned with the repeats. Yeah, you're very welcome, Chris. So let's actually go a little bit further and say, okay, while we're here, so that's the connection between 2 repeats. I can make that a little easier to see. And we can count from one to the other, and it's going to be a big fraction, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 14, even number, that's good. Oh, it does hit an intersection in the middle. Cool. 14, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 14, 10. Reduced, that would be 7, 5. And so our x, y is equal to 7, 5, and our a over L is equal to y over x plus y, so 5 divided by 7 plus 5 is 5 over 12, which is pretty close to a half. I would probably do this on a diagonal grid. And because it's in the equilateral triangles tiling, you can always get that with a perfect border. So yeah, if I wanted to fold this with more repeats, I'm definitely doing more than 64 because 64 cuts off the next set of repeats, and I want to get at least these clusters around on most of the sides. Actually, probably the best place to cut off is in the middle of the next repeats, which, so let's see, this bottom corner, look at it this way. So the bottom corner is the same location in the infinite pattern as that point right there. So it's the two closed triangles below the cluster with the double open triangle on the back. So that guy is that guy. And then coming down here, so I'm going to start my count at 32 there. 34, 36. 36 gets me to exactly where I want to cut off, but I want to have wiggle room. I want to have particularly wiggle room because it's not going to be a perfect, like if I'm doing a diagonal grid, it's not going to be perfectly aligned. 36, 38, 40. 40 does get me past, but only like 2 spacings past. 40 would, like 40 from the center, aka 80 divisions total, would be enough to clear the next repeats. And then I could add a bit more for more border. So this is where I started at 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44. I mean, that's starting to get kind of far, but 88 isn't a fun grid to fold either. 46, 48. I mean, if you want a nice big border all the way around and you don't want to pay attention to exactly how many, like, yeah, you could even add another, I would still stop it at that break line. So something in the 80 to 96 zone is what I'd recommend for the grid, diagonal grid on a hexagon. So you can tell, like, as I'm talking through that, I'm talking through, oh, this is the place where I'm going to stop the border. This is how the repeats are going to look on the inside. This is how much of a pleated border I'm going to get. These are things that are more predictable because of this particular tiling. A lot of times with the less predictable tilings, aka ones with hexagons and trapezoids. So hexagons and rhombuses, I've gotten to a place where I've accepted or where I've figured out a lot of the predictability around that. Things with hexagons and trapezoids, that's a whole different beast. But that's a story for another time. All right, happy folding, everyone. Maybe you'll try some of these new designs. Maybe you'll check out the Advent of Tess ebook, which I think I went this whole hour plus without saying. It's at gatheringfolds.com, origamiusa.org, and origami-shop.com. So happy folding, everyone. There's actually 4 different Advent of Tess ebooks, and this is the 2025 that I've been talking about. And I will see you in the next video. And actually next time is a good time to come live because it's a gridding support session. We're going to be looking at whatever your questions are around grids, and I'll teach whatever you want to know. All right, happy folding, and see y'all later.